I first started reverse engineering Clays back in APIs over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago at this point, and I was hoarding the data. But now I just want to give it away. You know, they're charging for data that is becoming a commodity. So it's getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper outside of Clay.
The Next Gen Sales Leaders Podcast. Coffees for Closers.
What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Next Gen Sales Leaders Podcast. My name is Benjamin Reed. I'm here with Jeremy Ross. He is a freelance and a solo GTM engineer. He's worked with many clients and most recently Go Nimbly. He is now really setting off on his own, and he's building his own personal fractional GTM agency. And so would love to introduce you as well as hear about your story. Obviously, you are on the cutting edge. I know you're a huge GTM nerd. And we'd like to understand, what's your focus? Obviously, we'll start cutting it up around all the different crazy stuff going on in the market right now. But why don't you give a high-level overview about your background, how you became a GTM engineer, and we'll get into it.
Yeah, definitely. Great to be here. And there is a lot going on in the market. I'd love to dig into that, a lot of drama. So the way that I got into this space, though, is through sales leadership. So started at a company called LaunchDarkly, where I rose up the ranks pretty quickly to lead teams of up to around 13 reps. And so stayed in the top of funnel space for quite a while. So worked at LaunchDarkly and Capado, and even a director of sales at a company called Adriel. And so working in that sales space, though, gave me a lot of context into what it means at its core for a team to be successful. And at the core, you need a very strong operations relationship. And so I would bug the heck out of them until they finally just gave me an admin key. And so I would always get the admin credentials at every company that I worked with and realize that that's the thing I'm staying up until 2:00 in the morning working on happily. Is everything around the systems and the operations. And when I got the opportunity to work with Go Nimbly and to build out their Clay practice from scratch, I jumped on that. So that was my official stepping into the role of a senior go-to-market engineer. And since then, I've worked with companies like Figma, Intercom, which is now called Fin, and Snowflake and UiPath, and in all different ways around the go-to-market engineering space, from building out tools from scratch to scaling up what they've already got to do very strategic outbound, for example. And so now I'm doing it as a fractional go-to-market engineer or architect, working with similar sized companies, but also a few smaller engagements as well, doing things like building AI agent suites internally, as well as just building out Clay and N8N and all the core go-to-market engineering tools for these companies. So very exciting space. And like you said, I am a huge go-to-market engineering nerd, and would love to dig into any topic that's top of mind for you.
Yeah, it's interesting that, and I don't know if it's because you and I are in the inside of a bubble, and we can't see out. And I don't mean like a bubble like it's going to crash, but like we're just like walled off from the rest of reality. But it just really does seem like sales operations has taken front and center stage. Sales operations, revenue operations, now what people are calling, GTM engineers. And it's because, just in the last couple of years, obviously all these new tools have come online, along with the AI agents that have really turned on its head what is possible to automate and to really just do more efficiently and effectively. So do you think this is just simply hype? I mean, how did all of a sudden sales operations become so interesting to people? Is it because AI now requires better system engineering? Is it because Clay has been so vocal in terms of its promotion of its own product and people just jumped on that bandwagon? I mean, why do you think all of a sudden this is top of mind for people? Or do you think it is and always has been, and it's just a continuation of the past? This is a break in the podcast to bring you our sponsor, RevOps.com. That is REVYOPS.com, the #1 GTM data management platform for your GTM and revenue operations data on planet Earth. If you are using the modern stack of Clay and Instantly and Email Bison and RB2B and Trigify and all these various tools scattered across the wind, we unify all that data all into one place so you don't have any duplicates, a unified view of every single contact so you can see all the data and all the activities across all the platforms all in one place. It will allow you and your team to move faster, to get better attribution across the entire funnel, and to make a heck of a lot more money. Go to RevOps.com, check out how you can get started today with me on a call where we'll learn about your data management problems and how we can get you guys to the next level of growth. See you guys at RevOps.com. Go there now. It will be in the show notes as well down below. Let's get back to the podcast.
Yeah. So this is something that's been bubbling up for a while. I'd say when I first noticed it, it was about 2021. And the reason I say that is that's when I noticed some very technical salespeople starting to congregate with marketing people. And we became like this like tagging the word growth onto your title was the early version of go-to-market engineer, essentially. And so I was a part of some early communities. One was called the Pirate Ship. So a SaaS pirate ship. This guy, Jesse, he started this. He ended up creating this great tool called Lead Magic. And so he started this group, and we realized that we're just a bunch of hackers who happen to be good at sales, but we're just interested in the problem of growth. How do you solve growth? And so some of this resulted in like, how can we use tools to kind of break the system a little bit and, for example, scrape 100,000 websites? Or how do we really find out what's the pain for people that we're targeting? And Clay, they were there in these groups, in these early groups. So I think they picked up on a lot of those things. So I know for certain, Varun was in that group, the pirate ship. So it's called SaaS Pirate Ship, something like that. It was a while back, but they really paid attention to the conversations that were happening there. And so they just gave it a name, something that was easy to grasp onto. And so it was there. It was going to happen either way. But what was amazing was that AI came at the perfect time to enable us to do things in a faster way and to really spark our imagination in what was truly possible, going beyond scraping, for example. So Varun was there, and I remember that he was very engaged with the group and was absorbing all of the insights that we were sharing. And this group was very, very intense, like constantly, probably to this date. I had to escape it, but constantly churning ideas. Tons of people are there, just throwing out random thoughts, and like no idea was bad. We really pushed each other to the limit, I feel.
It's really interesting because, I mean, everyone knows what a GTM engineer is, and few people know where it came from. And I know that it was really coined by Varun and Clay in their effort to somehow make sense of this new world that was opening up. It sounds like from this, like in part from this group, and so I think that what's very strange, I think, for a lot of RevOps people is RevOps people are kind of like, well, we've been doing this all along. Like, what are you talking about, guys? Like, but there is a distinction, right? The big distinction is the ease through which you can use AI and low code tools to pull a bunch of different systems together and then do these enrichment waterfalls and signal waterfalls to automate, the creation of lists and campaigns. And that's kind of a new superpower that really wasn't within the RevOps function because it really wasn't possible in the way it is today. And so there's actually a different thing that allowed all these people to do it. Now, I think what's interesting is that it made list building sexy to some degree. And it turned, because I mean, fundamentally, that's like what it is. It's like go out and find a bunch of people, build a big bunch of lists, track those people across time and space, understand their intent, whether it's, whether they're a good fit, they're the right ideal customer profile, or whether they're actually in market based upon various activities. And then coming up with some type of crafted message or retargeting campaign, whether it's ads or email, et cetera. And so, but the fundamental, I think, difference here and the key insight is that now even sales guys could do that. Before it would you'd need somebody who knew how to write Python and somebody who knew how to do API endpoints and write whole systems and create databases. And you'd have to have a custom like AI model. And now all of a sudden, all of those things that were hyper technical and you couldn't even begin to imagine doing it is now possible today. And now you add Claude to the mix and it just takes it to the whole next level. So it's a fascinating thing to watch. What's surprising to me is how passionate people are about it. Because generally speaking, when I thought of sales operations or revenue operations, it seemed kind of like a siloed kind of, the not cool kids club. Nobody really talked about it.
Okay.
But now it's like, it's cool to be a GTM engineer. So there's like a cultural thing that's happening. People are meeting up and making friends and they're traveling around the world together just because of this community. So it's just aside from like the tactical piece of what you're doing and what we're doing, there's an actual culture happening simultaneous.
100%. Yeah, I'm definitely a part of it and I feel it. I don't know if it's cool. I feel like it's cool, but it's maybe vindicating. I feel like, okay, you said it's cool, so I'll accept it.
I think people think it's cool. I think that
Yeah.
you can just see it from. I mean, I would definitely not take me as the arbiter of coolness. Believe me. But I'm just reading. It's like cool is defined in my perspective as people are deeply passionate about it. They're and it goes beyond just the subject. There's like an actual, like the way that people engage with each other. There's this kind of like sarcastic banter. People are talking about the UFC and like things completely unrelated to what's going on in the GTM world. And it's like there's actually groups of people forming around it talking about these subjects and they're excited about it. So that's when I say cool, I mean, it doesn't seem like just a boring job people are trading notes on. It seems like people are really geeked out about it. They're super pumped to share the next thing they worked on. Everybody wants to share their work and trade notes. Everyone's willing to jump on a call. People are pretty protective of it too. So it's like, if you spam the group, you're fucked,
Yep.
So it's like a whole little world,
Yeah, you're totally right, and I think that what Clay did was they gave it a name, and in giving it a name, it now holds a space in your mind and in the zeitgeist of go-to-market. So I really appreciate them for that. I feel like, though, right now there is some friction with Clay in this new world where we're super powered by AI and Claude. So while I love them, I do try to get clients out of Clay at times when it's easier to build in Claude, or at least ideate in Claude before like tacking things down and making it scalable in Clay.
Yeah, I
So
think
there's
it's
that.
partially that's the nature of the beast with this group of people. It's like because it is the hacker group, and hacker meaning like trying to use free open source tooling to get the lowest cost thing, like even open sourcing models, right? Like not using Claude itself and having like they will go to the nth degree to cut costs and say that it's open source. And so I think that's part of the culture. So I think as soon as Clay decided, I think out of requirement, to go up market because they had to justify their massive valuation, they realized they could no longer price in a way for the GTM engineering crowd, which was its original early adopters, that would please them. And so they had to make a decision of like, okay, Clay is kind of broken through to the middle part of the market. They're getting adoption from standard revenue teams outside of the hacker crew, and we need to price it differently. We got to make more money. We got to cover our cloud computing costs. And so I think that it was a kind of just the nature of having a venture-backed company. You got to grow and you got to raise prices, but clearly over the last 4 months, that's pissed off like a large swath of the GTM engineers because, now I think it was kind of the perfect storm of raising prices, going up market, and also Claude coming in and just enabling a lot of the workflows that weren't possible before without Clay. And
Hmm.
so, of course, everybody who wants to be a hacker now jumps in. And then you have like Eric Nowalski and you have Brandon Charleston, and you have a bunch of these different guys who were on Cursor back in this time last year talking about this.
Sure.
But now it's like kind of mainstream in the GTM world. So, I personally, I don't see how Clay survives. I mean, honestly, like I think Clay has its day in the sun, moment in the sun this year and the next year. But realistically, I just don't see how, as a venture-backed company, it survives. I think a company like Clay survives, but their expectations is to continue to grow. And
Yeah, there are multiples. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's their biggest hurdle, which is I just don't see how, given AI, it seems like they have a tough road ahead of them. Do you agree with that, or what do you think?
They do have a tough road. I do know also that they're working on some things internally that could help kind of sway those people who went away, or at least enable them in a way. So I'm talking about their CLI, which is different from an MCP in that like they do have an MCP tool which can be used by an AI agent, which, as you know, like that's where a lot of these go-to-market engineers are going to right now. So anything that's AI agent native or integratable, then they focus on that. So their MCP is sort of, I would say, handcuffed in a major way. That has very few functionalities that I would say are would enable you to like build out things from scratch or really make big swaths of changes across tables or anything like that. That's not there quite, but I heard that they have a CLI that's coming up that would enable something like that potentially, so that you can build at scale with an agent. And so that's going to be exciting. So that may help a little bit, but they're charging for data that is becoming a commodity. So it's getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper outside of Clay. So then their waterfall doesn't really hold as much ground, right, to keep people on the system. So it is very tricky. But I would say that Clay is extremely good for any company that needs SOC 2, Type 2, ISO, that needs like a really intense, like professional customer success team that will sort of hold their hands, for companies that need someone to point at when things go wrong, basically, right? So if these large companies start using Claude Code, then they can only point at themselves when something goes wrong. They need someone else. So that's a big part of it as well.
That's interesting. Yeah, we talked about that before on the SOC 2 side. Yeah, it's interesting piece because like you really don't get into the SOC 2 territory until you get into the more upper market enterprise related deals. But it's interesting because, like, for example, we're launching a desktop application on Friday. It's essentially a Clay replacement, but it sits alongside Claude Code. So there's a terminal and then there's a table. It does everything Clay does, but we're giving it away for free. And so for me, it seems like, how can they compete with that? When a team like us, like we have, at the peak we had 9 engineers, now we have 5. I'm speaking about RevOps, my software company.
Sure.
And we started as a data warehouse, which connected to Clay and also had analytics. But what we found was a lot of our clients came to us and started asking, how can we have a staging database that helps us clean up and source leads in a CLI? Take Apollo and AI Arc and Blitz, et cetera, pull it into one API, do a natural language prompt, show me 200, chief revenue officers in North America with at least 10 employees over $1 million in revenue, right? And then it goes across all the different providers, sources them into a table, automatically deduplicates them, automatically enriches with million verifier, automatically does all the other stuff. So we have that coming out. It's free, So, and again, I'm saying that as it took us 5 months to build it, powered with like a lot of AI, and it wasn't easy. But my point is that we have, a ragtag team. We did it as a way to get people into our data warehouse product.
Sure.
But I find it hard to see how they can justify their enterprise prices when teams like us can come in and essentially offer. And there's many little ragtag teams doing this too that are popping up. So it seems to me like having a table with a data endpoint from multiple providers and some type of enrichment waterfall is kind of like a commodity in a way. Longer term.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think the big unlock will be multiplayer mode. So right now, Clay is one of the few very well done multiplayer mode go to market orchestration tools. And of course, you can remake that locally, which it sounds like you have. But the real unlock will be making it multiplayer so that you have transparency across the whole org. Whoever wants to jump in and see what was built, how it was built, to maybe make little tweaks, look at the audit logs. That's all available in Clay, and it's very easy. And so, and audit logs are actually very important the more you go up market, right? So if there's compliance or whatever, or let's say it's a healthcare SaaS company, HIPAA is very strict, and you need to follow the audit log to if there's any complaints about anything ever. So that could be pretty big. Once there are some systems out there though that enable more multiplayer mode and like running Claude Code agents in the cloud maybe, and then that's where everyone engages, even if it is somewhat like terminal based, that could be a huge unlock. So yeah, in the next year, I feel like that'll come out. So it maybe, Clay is going to have a real run for its money, but they have an amazing team over there, and they're building like crazy. So I'm excited to see what they come up with.
Here, I'll show you what we have coming out on Friday application. And we have test demo data in here, but it does exactly what you just described. So we can do a search, and then it gives us like a little bit of a kind of a project brief of what we're going to go search for across, say, Apollo and AI Arc. And then what it does is it builds the project in live time into a table, just like Clay. But unlike Clay, we have a data warehouse connected to it. And so what that allows us to do is to see all of the existing synced contacts in the warehouse. And because we connect into the sequencer, we can see anybody who replied previously, anybody who was verified previously. And this is all local to the computer. And it also pulls in million verifier bounce band, automatically enriches, but it doesn't require somebody to set up the table. It just automatically does it. And to your point, it gives you a full summary. So it gives you a full list of like how many leads were sourced and how many were verified, how many phone numbers occurred. And then it gives you a full activity timeline across everybody on the team. So no matter where they're living, whether it's, somebody in Pakistan, somebody in, say, South America, or somebody in the United States, they have a full historical log, a breadcrumb trail across every single project. And every project is its own, I'll go back here. Every project has its own list of people. So let me actually get through. Bear with me. I have to go through to finish this, unfortunately, to make me go through my own onboarding to give you this example. We'll go return to test mode, and I'll just say yes again so I can go through it. But the point is that you get a full list of all of the people in these various projects. And for you as an agency owner, you can segment it by all the different clients. And this is all free. So, I guess that was my point is like, we're giving it away for free. I'll just go very quickly through the rest of this to attract people who want to do this part of the workflow. And now they can have all their projects across all their clients here on the local desktop. Where it becomes a pay to play is when they want to connect it to RevOps, the cloud. So where it's multiplayer, we're going to charge for. But again, my point here is really to say, for Clay, whether it's RevOps, I'm not saying I'm going to go disrupt Clay tomorrow. I'm saying that
You
I
could,
don't.
man.
Maybe. I mean, that'd be cool. Maybe I look back in 5 years and I go, that was the moment. But
Yes.
I see this type of software as relatively easy. Now, look, I've invested $250,000 into building that. So I'm not saying that that's like anybody can go do it, but it doesn't take, what did they raise? Like $100 million or something like that. Like they raised a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I just don't, I think with AI tooling, with the new capabilities, they don't have a moat, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So
No, I totally agree. And, they just kept raising and raising and then letting their customers and whoever else give them money and they're like selling stocks left there. Honestly, I think that they saw the writing on the wall and that
mhm.
they knew that their time in this in the spotlight was going to fade pretty soon because of this wave that was coming. And they yeah, so they've got a lot of runway right now. We'll see, and I love seeing startups like yours and others pop up that are disrupting the space and just proving like how easy it is truly. Um, so yeah, it's going to be interesting.
From Shakespeare, which is, there's a tide to the affair of men when taken at the flood leads on to fortune. You must take the tide when it serves or lose your venture. They just hit like this window. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
like early
Mm-hmm.
enough in 2022 where AI was so new and they just jumped right on the trend. They built the perfect tool at the perfect time and they marketed it perfectly. They just executed perfectly. And they did their exits on some of their secondary, market shares and got out like a few months ago. A lot of the guys made a lot of good money there, and yeah, I mean, touche. I'm speaking from more of like as a whole, from the investors, the people that are expecting some massive IPO. I just see it
Mm-hmm.
as a challenge. Uh, I think the longer term value is actually in the data, the long term stored data. So I think my whole bet with RevOps is in what I call the person graph, which is not what I call, what people would call the person graph, which is across time, what matters is not building a list. To your point, like there's new Blitz just came out with their $500 a month unlimited
Sure.
plan, and then you have we just had Tom Blue, who owns another one. Now you have a Molt set coming out from Adam Robinson. He says he's going to give you unlimited data for like triple verified unlimited data for $25 a month. It's
Hey,
like,
okay.
yeah, but it's like the point is like there's no, you don't need a lot of this waterfall enrichment stuff if people are just going to give you commoditized, really solid data. So where does the game go? The game goes not in list building or list sourcing or list finding, which is what Clay's value prop. It's really more in how do you track people across a revenue cycle, across companies even, and deeply understand where they are in the intent and buying cycle. And I think that comes to, you have to track people across multiple platforms. You have to put them into a one person view, meaning Bob across HubSpot and Instantly and HeyReach and 5 signal providers and etc. It's the same person. And so I think that's the only way AI can really act, because you need not only to know all those things, but you need to know where is that person or that company within the buying process, right? Have they ever replied? Are they in a qualified deal state? Have they won a deal? Have they, etc. And I think that where all of this goes is AI needs something like that,
Mm-hmm.
and within a company, that's
100%.
the value, But Clay doesn't
100%.
really permit that. That's not their space. They're not a CDP. Maybe they
Yeah,
pivot.
I mean, I wish they had better ways to tap into some of that context. Yeah, so I think that context is key. If you want to build out a tool today, it has to have some way to tap into your context, period. And what you're building, honestly, it sounds amazing. Like you're positioning yourself in a way that enables people to tap into really granular pieces of context, like attribution across tools and whatnot. That's huge. And being able to loop that into an agent and have that as like this decision point, right? Injecting that sort of data at key points in your workflows, those are going to be the winners. Any company that can provide that, you're golden.
To some degree. Now, there's some
Mm-hmm.
that do it very well,
Mm-hmm.
but what a lot of AI SDR companies have done is they basically took the LLMs as a wrapper and then did what now everyone's doing with skill files, right? They chain prompted a bunch of skill MD files together to come up with a workflow that says, okay, go into the CRM and check, if the person fits a certain set of criteria. And then next piece of the waterfall is if yes, then check the last 5 emails that were sent and check the opportunity status. If yes, draft an email. Like that's basically what they did. And there's
Mm-hmm.
some safeguards I'm sure they put in place, but it's not something that is hard to do now with Claude. I mean, you can go create a whole skill file, put it in GitHub, get your Obsidian going with a bunch of different context around the ideal customer profile. And you can come up with your own little looping agent that constantly checks for context. So, I don't think that the challenge is the AI agent. I think AI agents will become, again, a commodity. You can train any AI agent. It kind of is a commodity right now. You can train any AI agent to do anything with enough diligence on your skill files. And so then the question becomes, well, what actually is valuable? And I think what's valuable is the shared historical context of the person's activities. That's the data that matters. In context of other people that they are engaging with within the deal cycle, the buying committee, obviously the natural parts of a deal cycle from, the first awareness stage all the way through the one deal. So, and that turns out to be fundamentally more difficult to manage than these skill files. So that's why I think you even see, I had one of my first guests on this podcast was, I think it was the second guest, was the founder of AI SDR.
Yes.
And
I know
he,
him. Yeah.
yeah, and cool guy. I actually learned a lot from him, but he's been posting on LinkedIn recently. It's like, I don't know how people are making AI SDR companies profitable because like there's these massive P backed or venture backed SDRs that are just completely throwing free money at the market to get people to adopt. And so anybody who doesn't have 30, $40 million in funding can't offer that pricing. But even then it's like, I
Mm-hmm.
just don't see how they compete with Claude. I mean, Claude just comes out with their own AI SDR tomorrow. Then it just seems like such the most obvious path that AI is just going to just obliterate. So
Yeah. So, I mean, for the folks that are willing to work locally on their machines, they can do everything that AI SDR and all those other companies can do today, period. And I've built it from scratch. And, the skill file is one thing, but I find that just like you said, the data, like the context around the people and like their history, what touches they've been through in the past, that's critical. But also it's the restrictions and the structure that you give the actual skill folder itself too. So it's the scripts and everything that you're building out. And then another thing like, all right, so you could write a skill.md file, right? And that could say, I want you to use this tool in this way and da 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 da. Like I want you to use these APIs, but then it won't do all of that deterministically unless you give it some structure. So what I've done, for example, like with Instantly's API, is I made my own CLI that's based around how I want it to use certain segments of API endpoints for different tasks, right? So I would just build out the actual flow of how those endpoints should interact in order to achieve something. And same thing with HubSpot. For example, like you make a new contact. Well, first you have to check to see if that contact exists. And then if they exist, or if they don't exist, does the company that's attached to their domain exist? And then at the very end, then you have to associate that contact with the account. That's all just one CLI um, like action basically, but it's all like a script. So like knowing how to dig in and be very technical in those little deterministic key points in your workflows, that's how you're going to make something that's really robust. But that's sort of what you have to do today to make something local that's usable and scalable. And so that's why I think right now companies like AI SDR and whatever other venture-backed players can have a real go at the market. They'll do fine, especially if their pricing is low as they are. But at a certain point, they have to pay the piper. They have to raise prices. They have to do something. Just like Clay, they're going to have like a come to Jesus moment and lose a bunch of customers potentially once the real check hits the table.
Build versus buy. And even the GTM engineering community, it's highly ironic, but all the people that are super interested in open source and as free as possible, and like, hey, look at this thing I did with the $0 down.
Mm-hmm.
I think the GTM engineering crowd doesn't have a long term history. I mean, this sounds horrible because I'm betting a lot of money on it. Obviously, you are too. But you know, again, if coding is automated, if to some degree judgment is automated, these workflows are not endlessly complex. There's a finite universe of all the things you can do in GTM, and maybe it's not this year, maybe it's not in the next 3 years, but at some point, I just don't see how all the GTM engineers who need to effectively construct the system, come up with the workflows, come up with this deterministic set of checkpoints, why it's not just fully automated.
Mm-hmm.
Which leads us to a deeper question of like, okay, obviously that's not today. Obviously there's a lot of work that needs to be done. Obviously there's a massive need for these people. But how do you think about that? I mean, where do you think this goes? Do you think you have a job in 10 years?
Hopefully I'm retired. No, so there will always be someone who needs to keep an eye on the AI at least.
So we
And
think.
yeah, maybe. Or you train an AI to watch the AI. But then like at what point does the human jump in? Maybe it's the CEO who just runs the entire company
Exactly. Yeah.
alone and is just keeping tabs here and there, just enough. But there's enough minutia to these workflows and creativity that I would say you need humans to at least nudge the AI in the right direction occasionally. But I have created some recursive workflows that can just run forever. Now the next step here is like, yes, you can set it up to run. It'll be recursive. It'll give you your report. It'll make micro improvements to messaging and like targeting in the campaigns. But who improves the workflow, the code that is that?
Mm-hmm.
So maybe once that's unlocked, that's when I will kind of have a lot less to do overall, and it's more just set up and walk away instead of set up and maintain. So that maintenance and the growth, like every time a new model comes out, that unlocks new things that I can bring to my clients. Every time Claude Code comes out with a new feature in their harness, right? Like for example, the newest feature or one of the newest ones that I've been loving is their workflows. So just from a simple prompt, as long as you have it set to the highest like coding abilities and thinking abilities, then it can spin up like 100 agents to go off and knock out whatever task you want to throw at it. So as these new things keep coming out, you need someone to implement it. And for now, that's me. Later, maybe I'll be training the implementer, and that'll be the new job. So who knows, man?
Yeah, it's hard to know. I mean, really to all of this, and I think that you and I and people in our space are like the 0.1%, of people using AI. So it seems like it's more widespread than it is. And I have no doubt the next 2 to 3 years, there's a tremendous amount of opportunity for people like you and me to go solve problems for people that really need this type of support. but this isn't forever, you know? It's like if
Yeah.
it's there's only two things that can be true. It's like either the AI prediction of exponential curve and growth is true, and and we are on the path of like, okay, we're all going to go sit on the beach and wait for us to get taken over and just be enslaved to the AI, or there is, or it's not true, and AI is fundamentally
Mm,
overhyped, and a human always needs to be in the loop, and we just don't know what the edges of that look like yet. I
mhm,
think we are kind of in this interesting lull and hype at the moment because
mhm.
you see like Uber and Microsoft and a bunch of different companies putting very clear restrictions, at least says the news, on their API or their spending limit of Claude because they're just spending
Sure.
gargantuan amounts of cash. Uh, and I think there's a deeper question of like, what is the utility of that spend? Are they making money? Is it worth it? You know, so there's deeper questions of market demand. There's deeper questions of capability. Now you have like
Mhm.
what happened with Mythos, where they launch it. I think was it Fable 5 or something. The
Fable
dumbed
5.
down version of Mythos, which is the crazy scary model that everyone that Claude made it seem like it would take down the internet. And then they roll it back because somebody, you know, in the government basically discovers that there's some type of loophole that can cause it to go run like crazy. And so then they roll it back. Who knows if that's just hype to pump up the IPO about how powerful it is, or if it's actually real. So we're kind of playing with like, you know, shadows and mirrors here. It's hard to
Yeah.
know what is real and what is not. I think it leans more towards we're going to be constrained on compute. There's not enough chips. I think energy is a constraint that everyone keeps mentioning. I think that
Mhm.
there's bureaucracy and politics that clearly is now stepping in. So
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think that I'm more on the this is not going to keep going exponential. There's going to be some roadblocks for AI. But but if I'm
It's
wrong,
tricky.
then you and I don't have a
No.
job.
So, all right, here's a few things. One is we are constrained on Earth for the way that AI can scale. So I think it was like 1 teraflop or something is the amount of AI, something like that. I forgot the exact terminology, but the amount of AI that we can sustain here is capped because of just the amount of power that we can generate here. But on the moon, if Elon has his way, he's able to generate hundreds of times over and above that, right? Because of the lack of the need for cooling, right? And like direct sunlight 24/7, no matter what. And like there's a lot of different factors that enables them to like scale AI to an interplanetary level. That's what we need to get over that hump. And I just want to be alive when it happens.
Yeah, it's gonna be crazy.
That's all I gotta
Well,
say.
I mean, that's what like let's say that there is some constraint, and let's say there is some fundamental hype, demand lulls, you know there's a flatlining of the curve on the growth of OpenAI and Claude. What are they called again? I can't remember their name.
Fable 5,
No, the owner of Claude. It's ridiculous. I can't remember their name.
Anthropic.
Anthropic.
Yeah.
So, you know, let's say that happens, and let's say there's also just fundamental supply chain problems like around that's not like a problem that just goes away. I mean, that's a problem that could take a decade or so to, or maybe 2 decades to resolve, where you have this kind of pent up capability and potential, but the potential is fundamentally capped. And so it's like, okay, let's say
Hmm.
we have to get to the moon. And it's like, all right, well, how then there's the logistics of how do you get the energy back? And I don't know.
Hmm.
I just see this as a next 50-year type of logistics challenge. Despite having a genie in the bottle, the genie just
Hmm.
needs a lot more juice. That's good news for us if that is true. I would say that we're probably going to see a massive collapse in the stock market in the next 3 years if that turns out to be
No.
true. You know?
Yeah, maybe the place that we need to be in order to sustain our careers is to be on the moon.
Yeah, exactly.
That's where the party's going to be.
Well,
That's
speaking of which, Elon
yeah.
Musk just went public on Friday, I think, and he's now the first $1 trillion man.
Yes, he is. Very exciting. I was just telling my wife that there was a welder that I heard about. So a welder, he was earning about $23 per an hour, and he a welder for SpaceX. Overnight, he's a millionaire.
That's crazy.
And the sleepy Texas town that was where a lot of those employees lived, it at one point was named the poorest overall city in the United States. Now there are hundreds of millionaires overnight,
Wow.
and just wild. Wow,
That is
super
wild.
exciting stuff. Did you put any money down?
No.
I gotta
But I
know.
mean, I have to look at
I want to
what the stock
wait.
price is doing. Yeah, I mean, I've heard
Yeah,
people say, let's take a look at what it's doing right now. That
started at like 130, something like that.
yeah, it went up like 20%, but then let's see,
Okay.
it's under Space X.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not. The problem is the S&P 500 index seems the same. What's it called? It's Space X or
SPCX.
yeah, SPCX. Oh wow, shit. It's up 20% today. Oh my god.
Ay, ay, ay. I
Maybe I
think we
should have
screwed
bought.
up.
Yeah, I
We
think we
screwed up.
screwed up. Yeah, and the ask. Oh wow, that's wild. I mean, because people think that they're way overvalued, but the truth is like, who else is in
Mhm.
that game? I mean, at that level, they have such
No
a
one.
head start,
Oh
and
yeah.
so
Oh yeah.
yeah, man. I mean, that's a tough one because they have some ridiculous multiple, but they also have the biggest potential on. Like, I mean, you just have the whole universe that there's nobody else coming for them. So
Legitimately, yes.
that's wild, man.
And I did get to try out Fable 5 before it got locked down, and it was truly amazing, I have to
Was
say.
it?
Like, it's catching things that Opus 4.8 missed, just like flat out huge bugs. It was able to refactor an entire code base over the course of 8 hours. I just gave it the directions and it figured it all out for me. It did some very intense, like, if you know, like what just a monolithic code base, right? Turning it into microservices, that's a pretty heavy feat. And it did it just while I was out to dinner.
Wow,
Um,
that's crazy.
yeah, yeah. So I was bummed to miss that. But I did go through like a week's worth of credits in just a few days. So there's that as well.
This is my bet, and I could be wrong here, obviously. Is I think that there's a lot of people that are building their own deterministic data layer and systems, their own Python scripts, their own workflows. And I think what's going to happen is I think that when we have a constraint uh, on the chips and the compute, I think there's going to be, and people being these massive companies stop subsidizing the growth. You're just going to see this like tripling or quadrupling of price. I think that's what's going to
Hmm.
happen, and
Hmm.
maybe not in the long term, but in the short term, I think that's going to happen. And I think that just from watching my own development team, we constantly have bugs, we constantly have issues, we constantly have edge cases that we didn't think about before.
Hmm.
Uh, and I think what's going to happen is a lot of people building their own code are going to have like 400, 500,000 lines of code that have to be maintained, and it's gonna I think it's more difficult than people realize over the long run to maintain that type of code base. uh, Again, I have 5 developers full time. If I didn't have them, I wouldn't do anything other than just fix bugs and just deal with bullshit. So I don't know
Yeah.
how. I hear about some of these solo GTM guys who have their own 400,000 lines of code written, and my thinking is like, dude, like, what do you like? Do you do anything other than just manage this thing? So I don't know. It's interesting. Like it's and I think that the problem is the deeper you go, the harder it gets, and the more code you write, the more management it's required. So I think there's
Hmm.
a trade off of cost, a trade off of time, a trade off of even ability. I mean, there was a quote from one of the Anthropic guys who were saying like, when shit goes wrong, like we don't know what the fuck to do because it's like, what do you do? It's like you have 400,000 lines of code, you've never reviewed it, you don't even know where anything is. How could you possibly know how to fix it? I personally got into version 750 on a lovable project, and I just had a catastrophic bug. Like it just, I could not get it to, like I could not undo things, I could not go forward, and I just had this lump of at least 30 hours of my time in a lovable project, just completely shot.
Yeah.
And I think
I've
there's,
been there.
you know what I mean? Yeah.
Yep,
So,
exactly. Yeah, so that's when you really know if you're into AI for the long haul. Like if you can hang in there with the maintenance and you're not just building something until it's just barely a demo. If you're actually building something in a way that is maintainable, that's why I took my code base for this particular project, turned it from a monolith into these microservices. And so the project actually is pretty interesting. It's me. I reversed Clay's API on the back end. So like every button click on Clay, it hits an API endpoint, and that's in the UI, right? So I essentially harvested all those button clicks and looked at what those API endpoints are, and just replicated that in my own tool and made it so that I can really unpack what's happening in these super complex Clay workbooks that I built, but also build them. So yeah, so that's the tool that I've been working on, and I'll release it pretty soon. So keep an eye out on LinkedIn, and I
cool.
can, yeah, I'll send
Is
you an
it,
invite.
is it free? Freebie?
It'll be free. You know, I've been hoarding all this code for years. I first started reverse engineering Clay's backend APIs over a year ago, maybe 2 years ago at this point, and I was hoarding the data. But now I just want to give it away. So,
I feel you.
Yeah, you got to, because people are going to do it anyways. You know?
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's how we felt about the desktop app, which is really just, okay. You know, this piece, people are going to do it free anyways. Might as well give it away for free, and helps, and it brings people into the much harder thing to build, which is the data warehouse. So, yeah, wild times, man. Who knows? I mean, we truly are on the cutting edge, and I'm kind of at the point where like I cannot have any attachment to the outcome of any of it, because we just might all just be out of a job in a year, you know? Like I don't know, man. So like the best I think we can do is just do things that are interesting to us, try to solve big problems, and wish for the best. I mean, that's where I'm at right now. I don't know about you. Yeah, exactly.
Make
That's
some
right.
money.
Well, I think that's a good
have
place
some
to
fun,
potentially call it. What
and
I like
make
to
some
do
friends
before
while
we
you're at
end
it.
the podcast
That's
is
it.
talk about, first off, where can people find you? Obviously, Jeremy Ross on LinkedIn. Anywhere else?
Yeah, so on LinkedIn, there are a few Jeremy Rosses. So just to clear it up, it's / Jeremy Scott Ross for the URL there, and you'll find me. Yeah, you can go to my website. It's gtmfolks.com. So gtmfolks.com, and that's for my consulting. And yeah, hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm always down to talk shop just like this. I have room for a project coming up here in July. So hit me up if you're interested in doing some cool go-to-market engineering, maybe some AI agent stuff, really improve your go-to-market in Clay. And we can set that bedrock
Cool.
and then build
Well,
on top of it with something like
links will be in
Claude
the show
Code.
notes, everyone. So if you want to go
I'm
check
up
out
for it.
Jeremy,
Let's chat.
feel free to check the links below. Obviously, show some love. Go comment on some posts, and reach out to him. Sounds like he's open to chatting. So, last thing I always ask all of my guests is, it's not about necessarily anything we discussed, although it could be. I like to ask, if AI takes over the world. I use that as just one example. Whatever could happen in the future
Yeah.
where you're not here, right? You pass to the other side, whatever, but you've left one message for planet Earth, and the aliens come down, and this is the only message that they see, where the future of humanity sees this. What message would you want to leave with people?
Don't paste your API key into Claude.
There you go.
Don't give it your secrets,
And
man.
and if that
Don't give it your
happens, you
secrets.
will your whole world will implode. It'll just invade. That's a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a lot of metaphors to that, right? So
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
I like
can
that.
unpack it if you want.
I have so many follow-up questions. Well, okay, we'll end it there. Thank you for being on. Appreciate you, and I'm sure we'll do it again at some point. So for now, we're signing out. This has been the Next Gen Sales Leaders Podcast. My name is Benjamin Reed, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.